This is my guide for intuitive empaths to navigate romantic relationships with left-brained, intellectually focused people. Hi, my name is Leah Chantel. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'm describing how intuitive, empathic, spiritually minded people can have relationships with people who are a little bit more left-brained, intellectual, perhaps atheist, or perhaps very strictly religious, depending on what side of the spectrum they're on. But they're very much living in their head, and they don't have a strong feeling for intuition and spirituality in the same way that you feel intuition and spirituality. Not everybody has this sense. And the interesting thing that happens in life, I've noticed, is that these two polar opposite types tend to be attracted to each other and come together in relationship. And I believe that's because we're healing and learning from each other. Some of the tips I'm going to give in this relationship video today may not resonate with you. And if it's uncomfortable enough as you're listening to this as an intuitive empath saying, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z to be with a left-brained intellectual person, then that's a sign that you probably don't love unconditionally this type of person, and you really should be with another intuitive, empathic type of person rather than be with a left-brained, intellectually minded person. And that's completely okay. But just know what you're looking for, right? If you have a little bit more patience, the power of the intuitive empath is that we can make relationships work with people who are a bit more left-brained, if we so choose. We are those powerhouses and we can make it work. If you're already in one of those and you don't want to get out of the relationship, or you've fallen in love with somebody recently of that mindset, that's okay. But you have to be aware of the prototype of their personality and how to handle them. And if you can't handle them, then you really shouldn't be pursuing relationships with them. It's better to just have your community or focus on romantic relationships with people who are a little bit more intuitive, empathic, and who are like you. So here's my first tip, number one, is that you shouldn't criticize left-brain people because they will see it as an attack. And you might think, but Leah, my criticism is constructive. I'm trying to tell them the right thing to do. And I really recommend not doing that unless that left-brain intellectual person has really genuinely begged for your feedback on something. If they really, really want to know what you think about something, then you can give them the constructive feedback, but don't mention anything to them offhand or just casually. Like if they didn't take out the garbage, don't nag them about it. If they didn't remember to call when they said they would call, never nag them about it. Just positively reinforce that you're so glad to hear from them when they do call. Only use positive reinforcements on these left-brain types because they're very quick to interpret criticism as a threat. And that's going to downgrade your relationship rather than upgrade it. And you might think, but Leah, no person is perfect. Like, I need to give feedback sometimes. Now, if a left-brain person is really behaving immature and wanting to do the wrong thing, you can set a boundary. I don't recommend directly criticizing them over what they're doing, even if it's wrong, but you can set a boundary and just say, I'm not participating in that. That's okay. Sometimes these opinions do come up from left-brain people. Maybe they want to do something like something you don't feel comfortable with intimately or something. And if that comes up and that's just a no for you, then it's just a no. And it's okay to say no. But don't nitpick and criticize them over everyday activities. Let's put it that way. So it's okay to have your freedom to say no. Having said that, don't criticize anything else. Only reinforce them positively unless they ask you for constructive feedback. And then you can share at that point. But don't share if they haven't asked for that feedback. So my next point about left-brain people that's very important is that they get very easily overwhelmed by too much communication. So if you're sending a lot of texts or messages, or even if you're just in the same household and you're the type of person who's constantly kind of calling out to them to ask for their feedback on something, but you haven't really officially set a time to meet and talk about something, that can feel very overwhelming for them. So even just you sending a text or calling out can feel like they've spent enough time with you that day and they don't want to spend any more time with you. And then in the meantime, as the intuitive empathic person who's calling out or sending the text, we may actually want more time and we want more opportunities to feel connected. But the problem is we haven't really thought through how to connect in a really authentic, positive level with this left brain intellectual person. We've been communicating offhand, and that's probably very overwhelming to them and even threatening to them because they want to focus on their priorities first, or even just have some quiet space. Sometimes they just like to have quiet space to go have a smoke or go drink. And people might wonder, why do people participate in these bad habits? But I think one of the reasons people do actually is they want their space, they want their quiet. And especially if they're the drinker or the smoker in the family and the rest of them doesn't participate, that's their chance to kind of withdraw and go into their own space. And so when you criticize them for doing that, you're kind of criticizing them for taking alone time indirectly, although you may not realize that. So it's not wise to do that. And it's not wise to interrupt their alone time or their work time or to kind of sporadically contact them without thinking about it. It's better to schedule blocks of time when you are going to spend time together. And if it's coming at the request of the left brain person, then that's even better. Let them decide when they're comfortable spending time. But if something comes up and you really need to plan something that's urgent, I think it's okay to initiate and say, hey, this activity is coming up. Can we schedule some time to come up with a plan to deal with it? That's okay because it's practical. I think it's okay sometimes to reach out to left brain intellectual people when it's practical to do so. Having said that, let them choose when to contact you as often as possible because they're going to feel more comfortable. They're going to feel like they're not overwhelmed and the time that they're spending with you is quite nice. So try to avoid requesting their time or demanding too much of their time or sending them a lot of offhand requests that you haven't thought through carefully, because that's when they're going to get their back up and that's when they're going to feel defensive about you contacting them. My next tip for left brain people, for intuitive empathic people to get along with them, is that we can't force intimacy or closeness from our left brain people. So they, by their very nature, are very defensive and they struggle to ask for help. They also struggle with forming close relationships because they're so used to doing things independently. That was what was valued by their parents. And often with left brain people, they're raised by parents who are very achievement oriented, and that's what they care about. They don't care about the feelings of their child or how they feel about doing homework. They just want it done and they want them to get 100% on it, and that's it. And if you don't, then there's going to be big trouble. That's the kind of parent that often these left brain people are raised with. And for them to receive a lot of requests from you to spend time with them or to hang out, they're not necessarily going to appreciate that. And they may actually really struggle to reach out and spend time with you. But having said that, it's good to let them initiate and let them learn how to do so, because that's going to help them grow and develop as a person. And you being patient will also help you grow and develop as a person. You might think, oh, well, this left brain person should be able to take my feedback. They should be able to listen when I tell them that I need X, Y, and Z. But you actually need to leave them alone and let them come to you when they feel safe. And that's going to build and build and build out this safety container, especially when you are opposite personalities and the left brain person is aware of that. You really want to give them space, because then they're going to learn, hey, I can trust an intuitive empathic person. They're not going to nag or criticize me. They're not going to demand my time over things that aren't important. They're going to spend time with me that's high quality time, and I can learn to trust this person without feeling threatened by them or criticized by them. So if you feel that that's too unreasonable and you're not willing to put in that work to be with the left brain person, then a left brain person is just not right for you, and you should be with another intuitive empathic person rather than with a left brain person. And that's perfectly valid. We all have preferences in our relationships. Some people prefer tall people, some people have other preferences. I won't go into all the different preferences, but when it comes to our intimate relationships, it's good to be open-minded, but we all have our own preferences too, and they're not necessarily wrong. We all have our comfort level, as we get close to people, and I think it's okay to honor that, even if it appears to be a little bit incorrect at times, because we have to follow our intuition over who feels comfortable to us in our intimacy. And that can be a left brain person, or it can be another intuitive empathic person, depending on who you are as an intuitive empathic person. My next tip for spending time and developing close relationships with left brain people is to realize that they've often gone through a lot of trauma to get to where they are, and it's not processed. Often they haven't reached out and looked for a therapist to process that trauma. And so you want to be aware as an intuitive empathic person to not stir up trauma by being needy yourself for their attention. So your neediness can stir up negative events that have happened in the past for them. And so you want to be really cautious to monitor your feelings, because even if you do everything else that's correct in my video today, but you approach them with the wrong energy, they are sensitive to that energy. It's very interesting. Left brain people say they don't really respond to energy, or they don't have a sense of intuition or believe it. But the interesting thing is, if you show up kind of with a needy energy, even if you haven't said or done anything yet, they will feel it. They're like intuitively aligned with feeling that energy, and they will run. They're like a horse, that just runs away if they feel any slightest hint of danger. So don't come to them with that energy. If you're not feeling right that day, then go see your friends, go see your family, go spend time with pets or with animals or nature. Do something else when you're in that energy to get yourself refreshed and recharged, and then come back to that left brain person when you're on the ball and you're ready to handle the way that they approach life, which is a very different approach from yours as an intuitive empath. I think that's some of the greatest mistakes that I made when I was younger, is that I assumed everybody felt about the world the way that I did, and that they perceived the world the way that I did. And it's just not true. We all have different personality types. Some people believe that's organized by gender. Sometimes that's true. We do see things differently by gender at times, but I think it's more important how we are spiritually than it is about our gender or genetics, Our spirit has a greater impact on how we communicate and how we choose to connect with other people. And so if we honor the spirit in ourselves and recognize our spirit for what it is, and we honor and recognize the spirit in another person, then we've got a much better chance at developing happy and healthy relationships.